Benny Morris, thank you for joining me on Head to Head. You are a supporter, a defender of Israel's current war in Gaza, which began in its current form after the atrocities on October the 7th, and which has since killed more than 38,000 Palestinians, including 15,000 children, displaced more than 1 million people, made Gaza uninhabitable per the UN, and is being investigated as a possible genocide at the International Court of Justice. A lot of people around the world think it's a genocide. I happen to think it's a genocide, but you have called that accusation absurd. Why?
What's going on, everybody? Z here. Today, we're diving headfirst into one of the most explosive debates you'll ever witness. Mehdi Hasan goes toe-to-toe with historian Benny Morris on the question of Israel's war in Gaza, genocide, and ethnic cleansing. This is not just a political showdown. This is history clashing with accountability. We'll dissect the arguments, call out double standards, and cut through the noises to uncover the truth. Mehdi comes in swinging, but Benny's got his defenses up. Who's right, who's wrong, and more importantly, what does this mean for the world? Let's get into it.
I once investigated a real genocide by Muslim Turks against the Christian communities of Turkey around the year 1900. Some 2 million Christians were killed at the time by Muslim Turks. And that's what a genocide actually looks like. What's happening in Gaza is a war. It's a war in which there are a lot of collateral deaths among Gazans. The war started, of course, by the Hamas from Gaza in a giant massacre on October 7th. And the only way to respond to that, and any country would have responded to that, more or less in the same fashion, I think, was to try and go after the Hamas. But the Hamas was embedded in the population, as you know, used the schools, the UNRWA schools, the hospitals as bases, as places where they stocked their ammunition, their guns themselves, hid in tunnels underneath these schools, in apartment buildings. And this all involved collateral damage, which of course the Hamas knew it was going to ignite by killing 1,200 Israelis on the 7th of October. I myself have problems with the war as it's being waged, but genocide it definitely isn't. The aim here is not to kill as many Palestinians.
That's not the definition of genocide.
It's one of the
you wrote a book on genocide. That's not the definition of genocide.
It's one of the definitions.
It's not.
Try and kill.
It's not based on numbers, the definition
It's also based on intent and on numbers.
It's based on the intent.
Yes.
There's to destroy, to kill in whole or in part.
There's no intent here.
That's
as far as I know, look, I'm not.
I just want to
I'm not a government spokesman. You seem to be presenting me as a government spokesman.
How did I present you in a government spokesman? I asked you for your view on the war. I didn't say anything. We'll come to the government. I'm just asking about your view right now. The definition of genocide, you wrote a book on it, is nothing to do with how many people you kill. So it's not a numbers game.
It's also a numbers game.
The ICC chief prosecutor has asked for arrest warrants, not just for Hamas leaders, but for the Israeli prime minister and the defense minister for war crimes and crimes against humanity. And he says he has mountains of evidence. We've all seen with our own eyes the Israelis in Gaza commit war crimes on camera, kill unarmed people who are carrying white flags, blow up apartment buildings, drop 2,000-pound bombs on crowded refugee camps. Can we at least agree, Benny, even if we're going to disagree on genocide, that Israel has committed numerous war crimes since the Hamas war crimes on October the 7th?
I'm fairly sure there have been war crimes, but the war itself is not a war crime, as the Hamas attack on Israel on the 7th of October was. It was a war crime from beginning to end. The aim was to kill as many civilians as possible, which they did, in accordance with the Hamas charter, which is to kill basically every Jew you can get hold of in Palestine.
But I didn't ask about the aim. I asked about the acts that are being committed.
As I said, probably there have been, as in all wars, war crimes.
Benny Morris just justified ethnic cleansing as a means of survival. But let's flip the script. If the roles were reversed, if Palestinians defended similar actions with the same logic, would Benny be so forgiving? Doubtful. This is the hypocrisy of selective morality. Keep watching though, because Mehdi's about to roast Benny's Zionistic double talk like never before.
You accept there have been war crimes?
Yes.
So you would support an arrest warrant for Benjamin Netanyahu?
I didn't say that.
Why?
Firstly, there hasn't been an arrest warrant.
I know, there's been a request from the ICC chief prosecutor.
So far, they haven't issued it. I don't know if you can hold a prime minister responsible if a sergeant kills several unarmed people intentionally.
You don't think the Israeli Air Force bombing apartment buildings, refugee camps, mosques, cemeteries, hospitals, schools, universities, libraries?
Firstly, it hasn't bombed, as far as I know, hospitals.
Wow.
They have attacked...
Literally no expert agrees with you on that.
That's not true. What you're saying is not true. The only hospital which I remember being bombed was by a rocket fired by the Islamic Jihad by mistake.
Oh
That's
my
as far
God.
as I remember. Israel has raided hospitals.
let me
talk. Israel has raided hospitals, but with infantry.
Let me ask you this
found
question.
Hamas people in there, Hamas headquarters, inside hospitals, under hospitals.
Actually, we've never seen the headquarters that Benjamin Netanyahu put a beautiful Bond movie video out for. We've never actually seen that from underneath Al-Shifa. It's been several months. We're still waiting for that. So on the 31st of October, according to Human Rights Watch, Israeli forces unlawfully attacked a 6-story residential building, killing 106 civilians, including 54 children, without warning. 4 strikes, completely demolished. Human Rights Watch found no evidence of a military target in the vicinity, making the strike unlawful, indiscriminate under the laws of war. Israeli authorities have provided no justification for the attack.
The Hamas always hides their own casualties.
Even the Israelis didn't say that they were hiding in the apartment building.
I don't.
You said you don't want to be a spokesman for the government. You're offering a better defense of the government than the government is.
I don't know. I don't know the particulars of that particular attack. It could be that there was a war crime committed there. It could also be that there were hundreds of Hamas fighters in the building alongside. It could be
Okay, so
have you ever seen footage? Have you ever seen footage coming out of the Gaza Strip which shows a Hamas fighter dead? Have you ever seen that?
How much?
All you see is civilians.
Benny,
because they're hiding. They're hiding.
I'm not a Palestinian journalist. I'm a foreign journalist. And guess what? We're not allowed in by the Israelis.
They are hiding their casualties.
So let me ask you this question. So then, I agree we should allow people in. Do you agree with me?
I agree with you. Let me tell you something about the Israeli Air Force, if we're talking about this. Each mission of the Israeli Air Force, and it's probably the most accurate and efficient arm of the Israeli military, is checked beforehand by a lawyer, etc., to see if there are actual, is there evidence, evidence of
I'm so glad
Hamas
you're pointing
being
this
in
out.
there.
Because it's not a rogue operation, it goes all the way up. See, we can indict Netanyahu for these attacks because it's gone up the chain of command. It's not a rogue sergeant. It's not a rogue sergeant, we agree. All right, you say it's not genocide. Can we at least agree that it's genocidal rhetoric and genocidal intent from various members of the Israeli government?
Yes.
Can we agree that the rhetoric from Netanyahu and Herzog and Smotrich, this is genocidal rhetoric?
Some of the ministers, I'm not sure about Herzog's quotes, and I'm not sure about what Netanyahu said, that some of the ministers...
Netanyahu said Amalek, Benny, you know what Amalek means.
I don't know if that's the same as genocide, but...
Killing every man, woman and child, and the donkeys.
Listen, there's something absurd about this line of questioning. If Israel was intent on genocide,
Can you let me talk? Hold on. Can you let him speak?
Would you let me talk?
Can you let him speak? Yes. Guys, we are going to have to stop the entire show, and you will all have to go home if we do not have some order. Benny, please finish your point.
If there was a genocidal intent in the war-making in Gaza, there would be not 30,000. Incidentally, the numbers are all issued by Hamas. We don't know how true they are. But if there was genocidal intent by the Israeli government with the Israeli military machine to commit genocide in Gaza, there would not be 30,000 or 20,000 Gazans dead. There would be hundreds of thousands of Gazans dead.
I'm sure.
That is called genocide, and that's not what's happening in Gaza.
Benny, we've already discussed that's not the definition of genocide. But okay, let me ask you this.
That's not your definition.
No, it's the 1948 Genocide Convention.
There's lots of different.
Forget it. Forget the 1948 Genocide Convention.
There are lots of definitions.
That's not true, Benny. There's only one. There's only one. It's the 1948 Genocide Convention.
That sounds dogmatic. There's only one. There's only one truth, the Hamas truth. Sound the same.
Is the 1948 Genocide Convention a Hamas charter? Is everything Hamas, Benny?
If there's a genocidal side in this battle, it is the Hamas.
Okay, let me ask you this.
Just look at its charter, read the words there, reads what it says about
by the way, Benny,
what they intend to do to the Jews.
Benny,
that's what is
Benny,
important.
I've interviewed people from Hamas and I've asked them about the charter. I'm interviewing you right now,
and I want to tell you it's a nice document.
I'm sure they do. Israeli minister called Avi Dichter, member of the Security Cabinet, he said, we're now rolling out the Gaza Nakba. He was referring to the Nakba, the catastrophe of 1948, when an estimated 700,000 Palestinians were driven from their homes. You famously documented a lot of that back in the 80s. You undermined a lot of Israeli propaganda that said they just fled on their own. So whether it's the 1948 Nakba or the 2024 Gaza Nakba, to quote Avi Dichter, for Palestinians, Zionism is Nakba. It is ethnic cleansing. Surely you, of all people, can recognize that.
I'm not sure I can recognize that, no. Yeah, you keep putting words in my mouth. Zionism's intent was to establish a Jewish state in the area called Palestine, or the land of Israel. Initially, the Zionists wanted to establish a Jewish state on the whole land of Israel, or all of Palestine. 1937, 1938, Zionism changed and said, we can't have all of the land. There are lots of Palestinians here. Let's share it with the Palestinians. In 1937, the British Peel Commission proposed the partition of Palestine between the two peoples living in it. The Palestinians said no and continued their war against Britain and the Zionists. The Zionists said yes to the partition proposal by Peel. The international community repeated the idea of the partition of Palestine between the Jews and the Arabs in 1947, November, the famous Resolution 181. The Jews said yes to the UN partition resolution of 1947, accepting it. They would get some of Palestine, the Palestinian Arabs would get the other part, and the Palestinians said no and started shooting the next day, killing Jews.
So this is one of the reasons I wanted to interview you, because...
Yes. Because I know some of the history.
You do know some of the history, and you said they all share. But the problem is, I don't know which Benny Morris I'm speaking to, because you're saying they all wanted to share the land. And yet, I have a book here that says, on the most basic level, Jewish colonization meant expropriation and displacement. Zionist ideology and practice were necessarily and elementally expansionist. Zionism was a colonizing and expansionist ideology. That's Righteous Victims by Benny Morris.
I know. And I...
You can respond.
I'm glad that the audience is cheering things I've written.
Because you were right in 2001, so I'm wondering about what happened to 2024.
And I agree with every word in there. But as I said, Zionism changed its objective and goal in the 1930s and agreed reluctantly, resigned to the idea of partitioning the land. And from that point on, the Zionists, a number of times in 37, 47, the year 2008, proposed partitioning Palestine with the Palestinians, and the Palestinians consistently have rejected partition under the Hamas Palestinians and under the PLO Fatah as well. They always rejected partition.
Let me ask you this.
That's the truth, the basic truth of the conflict. Zionists
hold on, Benny, let me ask you a question.
Zionists willing to compromise, and the Palestinians always say no.
Benny,
yes, go ahead.
I want to read a quote out to you.
Yes.
You keep saying lots of positive stuff today, sharing, dividing. I want to read a quote to you. There are circumstances in history that justify ethnic cleansing.
Yes.
That is not a quote from Slobodan Milosevic.
Yes.
That is not a quote from a Rwandan genocider.
It's
your quote. And a lot of your critics say you no longer just document ethnic cleansing, you apologize for it as well.
What's the context of what I quote? What you're
the context is you're asked, do you condemn what they did in 1948, Zionist militias? You say no. You're asked, they perpetrated ethnic cleansing. You say there are circumstances in history that justify ethnic cleansing.
What was the circumstance I'm talking about?
You say, I know that this term
What's the circumstance?
I'm reading your quote. I know that this term is completely negative, but when the choice is between ethnic cleansing and genocide, the annihilation of your people, I prefer ethnic cleansing.
So the Jews understood in 48. The Jews were under threat of annihilation by the Arabs, and that, in my view, legitimized, justified cleansing Arabs from Palestine.
Benny's energy is wild. He proudly claims that quote like he's accepting an award for most controversial statement of the year. Sir, you're not unveiling the cure for cancer. You're defending ethnic cleansing with enthusiasm of someone announcing a birthday surprise. And Mehdi's follow-up? Chef's kiss. So you're owning it. Cool. Now explain it. This is where things get spicy, folks. Benny starts fumbling with context like a high schooler caught plagiarizing the history essay. Benny is spinning.
The Jews were threatened with death by a second genocide after the Nazi genocide.
The Hutus said exactly the same thing about the Tutsis in 1994.
They were talking about the Zionists?
No, they said we can ethnically cleanse and kill these people because they're threatening us.
No,
right? Everybody who's ever done bad things says we're doing it defensively, right?
I didn't say threatening. I said the Arabs of Palestine attacked the Jewish community in Palestine from 1947 on.
That doesn't justify ethnic cleansing,
They were joined...
You can't justify a war crime, a crime against humanity.
Ethnic cleansing is not regarded as a war crime by any...
So you're fine with it?
It's not a matter of fine. It's not a happy event.
I'm trying to understand.
We're not I prefer ethnic cleansing of the other to being massacred my own people. Yes, sure.
Even if that involves innocent people being driven from their homes and not allowed to come back?
Yes, if you're under threat...
How does that fit with Zionists wanted to share the land?
Because, of course, the Zionists wanted... No, you're mixing... You're mixing up the times, the chronology. The Zionists were willing to share the land. The Arabs said no. The Arabs attacked them. And from that point on, the Jews, to defend themselves properly, they would have to drive out Arabs from certain areas from which the Arabs were attacking the Jewish
So it was a pragmatic thing in the heat of war?
It wasn't ideological, it was pragmatic.
Even though you yourself say that transfer was inevitable and inbuilt into Zionism. Your words.
It depends what you mean by transfer. A transfer...
Depends what you mean by transfer. You're the one using the euphemism.
It depends, It depends what part of the population we're talking about. Total transfer was never any part of Zionist policy.
Partial transfer.
A partial transfer from areas in which the Jews wanted to establish their state in part of Palestine, and from which the Arabs were busy attacking the Jews.
Okay, I want to bring in the panel. Before I do, a lot of talk about whether Zionism is a form of colonialism. If I said to you Zionism is something colonial, what would you say to that?
I would say there's some partial truth in it, but on large it's wrong. It's not a correct interpretation.
Those are Theodore Herzl's words. He wrote a letter to Cecil Rhodes, the founder of Rhodesia in Zimbabwe. He said it's something colonial.
Okay.
So maybe you should take it up with the founder of Zionism.
I can't take it up with Herzl.
Okay.
Herzl may have said that in order to...
Not may, he did say that.
Ingratiate... No, in an effort to ingratiate himself with the great colonizer, Rhodes, it's possible. That's not the point. The point is...
This is why I don't understand, Benny. Zionism...
You don't allow me to finish sentences.
I do, please.
No, you
please
do. You
please finish the sentence.
Continuously interrupt.
Please.
You're trying to do what Trump did to Biden.
Wow, I've never been compared to Trump before. That's a first. But you've actually eaten up more time saying that, so please finish your sentence.
In order to mess up his sentences. Zionism intended to liberate the Jews from the alienation and oppression under which they lived in Eastern Europe, also later Central Europe, by establishing a state of the Jews, with a majority of Jews, with Jews ruling over themselves. They ended up in part realizing that dream at the expense of Palestinians. This is correct.
Okay.
This is what happened,
Good.
as it turned out.
We'll end on a point of agreement.
And that's the debate for now, folks. Mehdi Hasan's unrelenting pressure exposed Benny Moore's contradictions and selective history. What did we learn here? That the Israeli-Palestinian conflict is not just about history, it's about accountability. Benny's arguments boils down to the excusing war crimes as unfortunate necessities. But Mehdi forces us to ask, when to survive or cross the line into genocide? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Do you think Benny's defense of Israel holds water, or is Mehdi right to call it genocide? Stick around for part 2, and don't forget to like, subscribe for more bold breakdowns. This is Z, and I'll catch you in the next one.